Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to the movies tonight, and especially this one, a little big chunk of Montana right here in front of you. Ivan and Ivy Macdonald, everybody. I'm Allison Whitmer. I'm the film commissioner for the state of Montana, and our film office is located at the Montana Department of Commerce up in Helena. And I think you guys would concept of home and films that you watch that make you feel at home. And I grew up in eastern Montana on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation. I'm not native, but I grew up over there. And I love the plains that run into the mountains because I can stand on the edge and I could feel at home at both. And seeing Chief Mountain as the film finishes gives me that feeling. So I'd love for you guys to talk about the experiences that you're having and how you feel about the film, showing it to all these different people around the country.
Yeah, it's been such an incredible opportunity to show this around and, have people see the beauty of Montana, the beauty of the Blackfeet Nation, and the beauty of our culture, our ways of life, and how we live. And like I was telling you, in Pennsylvania, it was such a really cool experience. After the showing, these two women came up to me, and they're Afro-Indigenous. They just found out, and one of them, I was talking to her, she was like, I've never felt so connected to a film in my life. She's like, I felt like I was talking to or seeing my relatives, because she found out through her great-great-great-grandmother on her deathbed told them they were Blackfeet. And then another woman behind her said her great-aunt said that. And so it was just really cool to have that experience and be able to commune with them. And I was like, hey, if you're ever in Browning, I'll pitch you a teepee. You're more than welcome. So they start following me on Instagram. I was like, I'm serious. And I think that's the coolest thing about our culture is that we're so warm and so giving and so not what you see on television. It's so different when you're there in person. And, we come from such, I think, the most beautiful place on earth. So.
Yeah, it's been really, not only is just home in the title, it's been really interesting to think of the concept of home, because as we show in the film, as much as Blackfeet territory is Blackfeet land and, where our ancestors have lived for centuries, it's as much as the bison's home as it is ours. So, I think really the whole concept of bringing them home, I think it was a really incredible kind of conceptualization, because, even during the process when I was doing research for the film and I did a lot of the writing with the narration, it was always that idea to really highlight that idea of home and place and sense of belonging. And it's always amazing to show it to people who have some awareness of Montana and Glacier and Browning, because people are always like, I've never seen it look that beautiful, even when we were home screening it. So, I think it's just, I'm so honored to call that area we just saw my home.
So I'm going to do a show of hands here. How many people have been to the Glacier Blackfeet area over in East Glacier? All right. And so one of the main themes that we really resonated with, because this film was a recipient of the Big Sky Film Grant, which is a financial process we have to support Montana-made projects at the Department of Commerce, was this idea that people who've been through there lots of times and people who've never been there can see the realization of the work of so many people and agencies and long-term planning for species restoration. And how do you guys feel about that? You guys feel like you learned something? You can raise your hand. Do you feel like you came away with something? There we go. Yes. So my next question to you guys is, what did your participants feel about the film when it was finished? You have a lot of participants in this, doing a lot of work over a long period of time.
Ivy and I were just with Paulette and Lethbridge. The Blackfeet phrase is Black Rock, so Sokokutuk. But we were just there with Paulette, and there was a bunch of Blackfeet from north of the border, because sadly our reservation is split by a border. And just the talk with the people there, and Paulette, Paulette, who does this amazing continental bison restoration work, and she was there talking with us. And I think that we've really found that all the individuals involved with the project, they've all had some sort of transformative experience. Like Latrice, who's in the film, like she's getting her master's in soil at MSU, and she just asked if she could show a clip. She's doing a big talk and a presentation next week. And it's always that kind of aspect too of, since this is our community, we really wanted the community buy-in, and the tribal government was a huge supporter at first, and have been supportive of the work. And I think a big thing with Ivy and I's approach of non-extractive filmmaking is really making the community partners within the project. And when we first started the film, we were able to siphon off some of our investment money and provide investment to the Any Initiative. And it's that kind of reciprocity which informs a lot of our projects, which from what everyone's told us to our face, they enjoyed being in the film and enjoyed the outcome. So it's been nice, and a lot of those people are still collaborators.
Yeah, and I guess like the participants too, like the buffalo. Yeah, like even before, I know they can't talk to me, but even before I'd start shooting with them, or like or pointing my camera towards them, I'd ask them if it was okay to film them, And so, I mean, they gave me permission, obviously, but. Yeah.
I believe they know.
Yeah.
Just like your horses know.
Well, they would like slowly turn and like look at you, and I'm like, oh shit, I know that's an ancestor looking at me. I'm like, oh, okay.
So this film has been shown in multiple states to large and small audience, mostly sold out audiences like here. And what do people who don't know anything about Montana say to you at the end? What do you hear? Because you got a hometown crowd.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking of, Ivy's been on more of our far-flung kind of Black Star, which is one of the largest film festivals in Philadelphia, Salem Film Festival, which is this, yeah. And so, I think that those far-flung reaches, the feedback has always been really amazing. I don't think people, majority of people don't know that, like, we always get like, oh, I didn't know Native Americans were still around type thing, to, be like, oh, well, you guys don't live in teepees and ride horses. And literally that's some of the stuff we've gotten. But, I think it's also when they see this wholly, like, humanistic look at Indigenous people, it kind of shifts their focus. Like I'm thinking back to our big screening in Seattle at SIF. And one of the guys I was chatting with was like, I've been in cattle work and cattle ranching for years, and even just hearing like the importance of like bison and how, the hopes of them living together with cattle, because, as you've seen, like cattle have a big, and we also didn't want to demonize cattle ranchers in the film. And, also just hearing that from them, where it like kind of shifts their worldview, has been really important, because at the end of the day, it's the impact of the film, which you hope will kind of have its longevity if it's able to impact people. So I think just people from around the country who don't know about the topic, or even the efforts of our community, I think they've been really very well received.
You read in the paper, you're like, oh, buffalo restoration efforts, et cetera, and it's a small article. And they don't really go into the weeds behind of the years of work. And then one of the things I really love about your project is that people do get to talk about, they've been working on it and working on it and working on it and working on it. And it's been a very small seed that has just slowly been watered. And now we're beginning to see, years later, the results of the efforts. So I'm going to open up questions to the audience, because you have them here. Time to ask your questions. Anybody in the back there? All right, sir with the glasses. The question is, how much footage did they shoot for this brilliant piece?
A ton. No, literally, we have like multiple crazy terabytes worth of stuff. And that, I mean, the cool thing about it too is like, because of all the footage, we're actually doing like 5 short impact films. And so, there's some stuff that didn't quite make it into the film, but it was like it's really important to continue that story. And so, take for example, like the little bison calf at the end. We have all this unused footage of her, and I'm gonna be doing an animated children's short mixed with
Yes.
mixed with like the footage that we have of her. And I'm gonna have one of the kids from the Cutswood School, which is an immersion school in Browning, and it's gonna be all in Blackfeet, and they're gonna be her voice. And then when she grows up, because we have footage of her now when she's bigger, I'm hoping someone else can do her voice, but that's something that we're trying to do. And so we just have a lot of footage that we haven't used, and it's cool to think about impact too, and also like have those films live on in some aspect.
I think you've got some funders here in the audience. There's a young man back there in his t-shirt, blue t-shirt. I saw your hand up earlier. The question is, can these buffalo be hunted naturally?
In the ways of their life and how their ancestors, how your ancestors hunted, is that going to be possible?
Yeah, I know that's a big thing that the tribe has been examining. I don't know if most people, it's on the news. I think it was earlier this year, kind of later in the hunting season, there was a lottery, which it was the first thing the tribe did. You could get lottery tickets, go out, and of course that was shooting. It's a very controlled environment, just because of, I don't think most people know bison are like 90% muscle and jump 6-7 feet in the air, which is incredible. They're like incredible animals, but so that's like a lot more controlled hunt. But I would love if there's some more like ancestral based hunting practices or whatnot.
Think of the boar buffalo jump.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course,
Yeah, I actually had this idea about because there's such a whole story and process when you actually see like a slaughter, and so I always wanted to do this. Maybe at some point, I want to do a virtual reality like thing, so like people who can't participate, can't make it out, can actually see it happening with VR. I have crazy ideas, but
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I've seen some great stuff in VR. There's a question in the back. Yes.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think, yeah, especially the most important point you kind of broached is the whole topic of brucellosis, because it's been kind of this scary word that's kind of been thrown around, and it does, and there is, I shouldn't say kind of diminish it in that aspect, but it is a very real, devastating disease. But if you look through the Department of Livestock, there's been no documented transmission of bison to cattle, and so it has been elk. So the elk have been the larger transmitters of brucellosis to cattle populations, and bison, there's been no documented brucellosis transmission and kind of their records, the Department of Agriculture. And, just to your first point too, with the chickens, one of my dreams was always to raise chickens. And, and I think part of the film too, we really wanted to talk about, and that was kind of one of the things, we really wanted to, with the film, really help people understand, where does your food come from? What is part of your food source? It didn't make it in the film, so we're hoping maybe something in one of our impact shorts, but where does your film come from? Or your food come from? One of the things that the tribe does with some of their slaughter is that they slaughter, process, they have a meat processing plant. They've got a few $1 million grant from the USDA and are using that plant to process the bison, because bison, sadly and understandably, is a lot healthier than red meat in some aspects, and so they've been distributing the meat to elders, schools. A lot of them say that no one has the taste for it yet outside. It's a lot of the old timers. I love bison. I've almost exclusively switched to bison meat for my red meat source. But it's those kind of things, part of the film, we might be doing a talk at an Indigenous Food Sovereignty Conference next month, and a part of that is what are traditional food systems. And I think something like raising your own chickens, raising your own cows, I think that's a whole part of that ecosystem.
Well, and chickens and bison have more in common than you think. They're both prehistoric animals. Really, your chickens are just mini dinosaurs.
Actually, some of one of the stories when we were interviewing in the beginning, one of the elders had told us that his elders had told him that Blackfeet actually believe in evolution, and they think that bison evolved from dinosaurs, because all through that whole area there's been a lot of dinosaurs in Montana, so it's another kind of cool point.
And if you want to learn more, there's an Intertribal Bison Council that works and has worked very closely with USDA and other government agencies, National Park Service, et cetera, to safely transport and quarantine and work with bison to make sure that there is no brucellosis transmission, and that the bison that are distributed more recently from, like for example, Yellowstone Park, go through a full quarantine process. So that's a very well-studied and very tightly controlled environment in terms of cattle safety and safety to other domesticated animals. Yeah. I saw another hand in the back. There we go. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's what you're here for, to transcend every limit.
I think that was one
Yes.
of the coolest things was working with sound. I'm like really into sound stuff, and so we were fortunate enough, Bob Edwards, who works for Skywalker Ranch, any Star Wars fans? It was like the coolest thing to be there, and so, but he worked so hard on it, and you know, it's funny because like the sound I think just takes you into this other realm of hearing the hooves, hearing, you know, kind of the reverberations through time and space, and I think that's that was like something that we played on. And it's funny, I'd like to add this too, is that you know, the horse that gets charged with the thing, it took us literally 5 creatives in a whole like little room just sitting there watching it and figuring out for 20 minutes if the whinny was high or low enough. So, but it was very meticulous in how we did that soundscape and everything. So
It's the immersion that I feel is the things that audiences in other screenings have really appreciated, of taking you, like Jane says, right into the world. And it's a world that, you know, we haven't been seeing, and we're so pleased to be able to work at the festivals to bring it to audiences. And I think you guys have had, what, 30 screenings at least?
Yeah, like we've had some.
Hundreds and hundreds of people. We'll take a final question here, Miss.
Yeah, so I think that's been one of my skills as a filmmaker. Like I do the majority of the writing for most of my projects, of not just writing the grants, but writing the treatment, writing the story arc, writing the narration. So Daniel and I worked pretty closely with the narration, and then Lily provided high-level feedback. And even when we were doing like the narration process with her in LA, and then we did a pickup one in Seattle, she was very involved in the process and provided us a lot of feedback. And that was just, whenever I start a new project, I do kind of obsessive levels of research. So like all of the quotes and the historical things, Daniel and I just kind of pulled out through our research, and that's kind of sustains me. That's where my background comes from as a social science researcher before I became a social worker. And yeah, you know, just the writing is so important for film. It's so important for the creative process. It helps you get your ideas out. It helps you create the story, do the narration, kind of all of that. And Ivy has a bit more of an interesting story of kind of connecting with Lily and working with her, and so I'll let her tell that one.
yeah, me and Lily actually met. I went to film school at University of Montana, and I had this like editing class, and we had to edit like a scene together. And this was like before she did anything really big. And I was sitting in class, and I was like going through all the stock footage of like the actors like in the school, and I was like, none of these guys are good. And not in a mean way, but then I got to her stuff, and I was like, oh, Gladstone. You know, I recognized the last name, and I start going through her stuff, and I was like, man, she's good. And so I ended up editing her as like the main character in one of the scenes that I had. And then flash forward like a year after I graduated, I was working at Good Food Store, and you know, she did Certain Women, and then like Winter in the Blood, all of them. And then she like came in to the store, and I was like, oh shit, that's Lily Gladstone. And no one knew who she was. I told my coworker I was so excited about it, and they're like, who's that? And I was like, she's gonna be a really good actress. I'm like, she's amazing, she's gonna be big. And then I like manifested it. I kept like, I was like, come to my line, please.
That's
right. And then she like came to my line, and I was trying to play it cool. And I was like scanning her stuff. I was like, oh, this is interesting that she's buying this. Like, and then I was like, I gotta say, I was like, you're so amazing. Like, I think you're such an amazing actress. And then she was like, oh, Ivy. She's like, Macdonald. And she knew the work that we do with MMIW, so she knew who we were before. And then, yeah, flash forward working with her, and I'm actually going to be doing my first feature debut as a narrative filmmaker. And so I'm coming on, I came on as a writer for a script that Daniel, Sarah, and Lily kind of wrote. I came on as a writer to help shape the story, and that's my directorial debut, and Lily's going to be in it. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
One of our funny favorite stories, like from our crew, because Lily's part of our Buffalo Cousins collective. It's like our filmmaking collective, is that like early on in the process, she's like, "Oh, I have to miss our group meeting." She's like, "I have a little meeting with Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio," and she's like, she had told us like after that, a few months after, she's like, "Well, I did get the role. It's under wraps," and so it's just been, I think Lily's just an incredible individual, and kind of watching her star shine, and she's lifted Ivy and I up through that process, and a bunch of other Indigenous creatives. So I always have to take my hats off to her and her community work.
She definitely is not one of those people. She's uplifting everyone,
Yep.
and that's what we have to do as Indigenous filmmakers. Is not just pigeonhole anyone, but it's like I know this person, I know this person, I
Yep.
get you connected, and so it's like it's a community, it's a group. So
The filmmaking community here in Montana does really support each other, and we're so pleased that we've been able to support the community up at Blackfeet, and we've been able to support it here, and we support tons of film festivals, and we want to have this great creative economy in Montana. One question down front?
Yeah, you just briefly touched on the MMIW, that she'd known some of your work with that. Do you have any plans to do any projects around that initiative?
Yeah, so actually we had the series Murder in Bighorn that we created and produced for Showtime, and then Ivy and I, which Allison is known because they were one of our early supporters. We have a Sundance supported project called When They Were Here, which is about our community and our family. And this will be my fourth story with the Blackfeet. I was like, they're not tired of me yet, so I'm going to keep asking them to be involved. Yeah, but so it's like, yeah, we're really invested in kind of that. I help run the Snowbird Fund, which disperses funds to families searching for their missing loved ones. And we've dispersed, I think, about $100,000 to families searching in Montana alone. So
we also did an ESPN short called Blackfoot Boxing Not Invisible that we won an Emmy for, and so that was just another project with that. So.
Yep. Well, you guys are going to have the opportunity to talk to Ivan and Ivy at the reception. Now they're going to run out the door and be gone. And any final thoughts from everyone? We've really enjoyed having you here tonight. Thank you for coming to the opening night of Mint in its 7th year. And we anticipate seeing you every single day this weekend for more movies because they're all awesome. There are also other grant-funded projects here. And thank you very much to Ivan and Ivy for
Thank you all for
opening
coming.
and being here at the Q&A.